You're listening to the Booze and Bloodshed podcast.
And that's a feeling that haunts me. Everywhere that I go, it's like we're running in circles, chasing a ghost. And when you look in the mirror, can you live with the truth? It's just a feeling that haunts me. Everywhere that I go.
Okay. Booze and Bloodshed podcast. Hi, Leah.
Hi.
What's she doing?
Hey, what's she doing?
Well, we are so happy that y'all have chosen to join us this morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you may be listening from. As always, we're here to discuss all things boozy and bloody. True crime and horror movies will be our focus every week, along with an alcoholic beverage that we think will pair well with the subject of each episode. Speaking of which, what's the episode today?
We are going to be discussing the serial killer Albert Fish, also known as one of his names, the Gray Man.
Fish Boy.
There were several others, and then we're also talking about Peticolas Sit Down or I'll Sit You Down double IPA.
We're excited about this one. So we're just going to, you know what? We're not taking a break. We're just done with that part. You know what I'm saying? Commercial break, and there's no commercial break. Whatever. So we'll just go ahead and fade this music down. And I guess get into it, right? Whatever.
So this looks like a little bit different. We didn't
we weren't really prepared for this at all.
Well,
at all.
I wouldn't say I'm unprepared, but I just didn't make sure that you knew what was going on.
And typically when we do something like this, Leah has to make sure that I watch it or understand it a little bit. And we just got back from Florida last week, so it's just been kind of like
busy.
Very busy. So we really haven't had a chance to watch this together and to get the facts. But as always, Leah's got a handy little cheat sheet here.
Like a 20-page thing.
And we are going to get into, first of all, the Peticolas Sit Down or I'll Sit You Down double IPA. So I guess let's go ahead and get ready.
It's a favorite.
This is one of my top two beers. I'm going to take it out of the 4-pack.
What's the other one?
Avery Maharaja.
Oh, I should have known.
Which is really close. These two are very close in character and stuff.
I don't know. I kind of prefer this to the Avery beer.
They are somewhat similar. The fact that they're both higher alcohol. They're double IPAs. They got the same color. They have a lot of the same characteristics. But man, this is a contender for sure. So Peticolas Sit Down or Sit You Down, Imperial IPA, 10% alcohol. So the name comes from Michael Peticolas' brother, his name is Charlie, and he was a cop on Cops, the show.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, his brother is Charlie. And Charlie approached some suspect, and the guy, I think, was trying to flee, and he said, sit down or I'll sit you down. And so now that's the name of the beer, Sit Down or I'll Sit You Down. So a little story behind that beer. But the description says, as for the beer itself, the intent is to exhibit the fresh and bright character of the hops. We dry hopped it with over 1 pound of hops per barrel of beer. It's golden color, and the floral ester aroma is high. The hop bitterness is high, but not at all harsh. The hop flavor is intense, fresh, and lively. Yet with all of our beers, it's the balance with one that's no exception. The ever-present malt character provides tremendously full mouthfeel. Finally, the alcohol in this beer is intentionally present and delicious. Delicious. So,
I think the name is very clever because this is definitely a beer that'll knock you on your ass. I actually just told you.
No, it's not a beer that will knock you on your ass. It's just a great beer.
It's really good, but sit down or I'll sit you down. Sit down while you drink it, or you're probably going to stumble a little bit while you're drinking it.
But 10% alcohol is pretty good for double IPA.
Good.
And this beer, let's just get into it.
You're just way too excited.
Does it have, I don't know if it has the name of the hops that they use in here. I don't think it's published anywhere, honestly. Okay, here we go. We're going straight from the can. Ooh, that sounded good.
Ooh, it did sound good.
Let's go. Ooh.
Mine was better.
I got a little foam and a little splash.
That is one thing I really like about Peticolas beers. I always get that. Every beer that I open, it's always
splashes in your face?
Well, not splashes, but it fizzes up, it's real foamy like that. And I like that.
Yeah, it just means they put a lot of care into their packaging. So let's give it a sniff. We haven't done that in a while. A little sniff. Let's
Oh
see.
my gosh, yes, we did. I think you did it the last one.
It smells malty, hoppy. I mean, I'm getting tangerine, grapefruit, pine, papaya, peaches. I'm getting all that stuff. What are you getting?
Just from smelling it? Damn.
Oh my God.
Are you okay?
Damn, you okay? Well, let's now we have to get a little taste. We'll get a taste. Let's see.
You act like you're talking to the dogs, like every time you say
Let's give it
something.
a taste. So Philly. The puppy's so Philly. Okay.
So freaking weird.
Oh yeah, by the way, the color is like orange to amber. An orange amber's color.
It's good. It's always good.
Oh. Anybody ever watch Craig Tube? I just wonder if anybody watches Craig Tube on YouTube.
You're probably the only one.
He got a following. Anyway, I watched Craig Tube. I've watched him for about 10 years. One of those things you don't really admit to people that you watch, but you do.
Like Auntie
I watched Anti-Fee for a long time too.
I know.
Okay, so yeah, it's definitely malty,
Yes.
but not overly malty. It's very balanced in the bitterness. The bitterness is definitely there, but not in an offensive way. It's balanced for an IPA, double IPA.
Balanced, because I definitely think that some Imperial IPAs, they can be too bitter, and it just kind of throws me off from wanting to drink the rest of it when it's too bitter.
Yeah, and this doesn't finish dry either. It's got a nice,
It's like sweet,
malty,
yeah.
and it's got like a fruity Pebble Fruit Loopy flavor in there too. You don't taste that? Take another drink and tell me if you
I
don't
don't
taste
know
Fruit
about
Loops.
that. I've never tasted that.
Drink it. See if you get some Fruit
No, I
Loops.
just hit my tooth.
See if you get Fruit Loops. Your tooth is okay. Give it a taste. A taste. It's Fruit Loops. Yep, there it is.
I don't know.
Oh, well, I got Fruit
I don't
Loops.
taste Fruit Loops.
I got Fruit Loops. So,
Your palate's a little more refined than mine,
Yeah.
especially about this one. I think you've had this like way more than
I've had this too much. Ron and I used to meet up on Saturday mornings for brunch. Ron's our friend that passed away from COVID. But we would meet up on Saturday mornings for brunch. It was either two places, Flying Saucer or Bankhead. If we went to Flying Saucer, we would get this or Avery Maharaja, and within an hour and a half, it was bad news. We were trashed. In a good way, though. We were responsible.
Oh.
But yeah, so I've had Sit Down for a long time, and it's still one of my top two beers.
You know what I realized the other night while I was drinking this and I
No.
was feeling pretty good halfway into it? I mean, and it's really not that big of a beer. Like, it's just like what is the ounces on this? 16.
16 ounce.
So, I mean,
can.
it's like a pint glass.
Yeah.
But like when you drink something that's this high alcohol, like if you go to a brewery, they normally give it to you if it's higher alcohol in like a smaller glass.
Yeah, like a little snifter.
But I sat there the other night and I was halfway down it. And I mean, 8 ounces really isn't that much, but I realized I am so fucking boring because I was already getting pretty drunk.
I didn't
and
say
I
it.
ended up buying candles.
I didn't.
Like, isn't that terrible? Like when you're a teenager and stuff and you're in college, like you go out and party and go to like bar hopping and stuff.
Leah's
And
buying candles.
I'm sitting in my living room chair halfway down a Peticolas Sit Down or I'll Sit You Down, and I bought candles online.
It's pretty great, isn't it? It's
It
pretty great.
is.
Welcome to adulthood.
I've
I guess.
matured.
I don't know. You have matured quickly, my friend. My friend. All right. Well, the Gray Man, the Werewolf of Wisteria.
He had several names, and he was also
I call him a sick motherfucker, is what I call him. I call him.
I guess we're going to get into this a little bit later
Let's go
because
for it.
his story is a little bit extensive, but he was also alleged to be the Brooklyn vampire. For those of you that are really into true crime, the Brooklyn vampire had like molested and raped and ended up killing some people, obviously in the Brooklyn area. And they never proved that he did this, and he did not ever admit to doing those. I guess they had questioned him about it, but he wouldn't confess to that. But he did admit to being the Gray Man and the Werewolf of Wisteria because those were names that the little kids in that area called him when they saw him.
They couldn't prove that he did those, but he did admit to having basically a victim in every state.
Yes, which doesn't make sense because he only admitted to like a few, but then he would say stuff like that. But he was just like crazy.
He was a nasty, horny man that was way out of.
Well, and you know what? Well, we'll get into it a little bit later.
A horny
He
man.
ended up getting married and having kids. Isn't that crazy?
Did they cover that in the documentary that I watched? Or two of them? I watched two of them. Did he? He had kids? Wait, yeah. Okay, yeah. He did.
That was
Because
like an
his-
entire conversation that you
with
just had
myself.
with yourself out loud.
Yeah, because his wife left him.
Yes.
We'll
she
talk
did.
about the kids
Yes.
part later. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
originally he was born, his name is Albert Fish. He went by Albert, but he was born as Hamilton Fish in Washington, D.C. to Randall Fish, who was much older than his mother,
Couldn't imagine having a last name of Fish.
especially as a woman.
God. You just made
Okay,
yourself.
that was gross.
You made yourself laugh. You are so silly.
I made you laugh. Okay,
Took me a second, too.
That was gross and inappropriate. I'm sorry. I've been hanging around you too long.
What
I
happened?
start saying stuff.
What
like
was
that.
inappropriate about that?
Okay, come on now. Why did you laugh?
Fish. Because it took me a second to realize what you were talking about. I'm slow. Anyway, sorry. Back into the.
But his dad was much older than his mother. He was 43 years older than her.
And he's not a good looking dude. He wasn't a good looking dude back then either. To be a 40-year difference. And
His
he
dad?
didn't. Yeah, I guess she was.
I never saw anything about his.
She
Like
was
I never
also
saw
horny.
his dad. I never saw a picture. But I was reading this
I'm
article
breathing
about him. About what?
Am I breathing heavy when I talk?
You're always breathing heavy when
Why
you
do I do?
talk
Why don't I do? My allergies are going crazy, but
because you're a mouth breather.
I am.
You just are. But I was reading this article about his dad, and I mean, even in my notes, I had jotted this down. But his dad, it said next to his name 1795 to 1875, and I was like, okay, there's no way. Like he didn't live that long ago.
100 years?
His dad was born in 1795 and died in 1875. Isn't that crazy?
Well, he almost made 100.
Yeah, and like for back then, that was like major.
Okay.
I mean,
By
it
the way,
really
I
was.
like the way you have the paper again highlighted
It's spaced out.
for the notes.
Every time I hand you notes, they look
Double.
completely different.
Double sided, by the way. They're double sided. Were they double sided last time too? They were, weren't they? Okay.
They were, but I
Let's
did
go
this
back
at
into the
home.
story.
But anyway,
So almost 100 years old, his dad.
yes, and he was the youngest child of 4, and he had 3 siblings: Walter, Annie, and Edwin Fish.
So one sister,
You
two
know what?
brothers.
They almost sound like book characters.
Everybody back then had some weird ass names.
They really did.
I've got an uncle named Edwin.
He wished to be called Albert after a dead sibling and to escape the nickname ham and eggs that he was given at an orphanage in which he spent many of his early years. I never understood why they called him that. Like I read so many different things about him and it always said that he was called that, but I didn't understand why.
I didn't know that part. Ham and eggs.
But he ended up in an orphanage because after his dad had died, his mom couldn't afford
Yeah,
them.
couldn't get a job.
Yes. And so she put them into an orphanage, and that's where everything started to kind of happen. He's one of the ones that I almost wonder if he's like with the question, are serial killers born or are they made? Or like how are heroes born or are they made? It's like the same thing. Is serial killer, are they born or are they made? Because I guess he was really young when he got put into that orphanage, but like they don't say that he was doing anything weird until like after he went in there.
Yeah.
And he like started getting beat up by like all these kids that were there, and he started to like it.
He started to like it, and then I think this is about what I'm gonna say, age 7 or 8. He was in the orphanage watching guys shower. So he would be at the orphanage watching people take a shower.
Well, and he befriended this kid that like convinced him to like drink urine
And eat poop.
Yeah.
Eat feces and drink urine.
So like it was just the whole thing was just very, very strange.
And that's what pretty much started making this thing.
Yes. And then after several years, his mom had gotten a government job, and so she was able to afford to take care of them. So she came back, but like the damage was done. Like he was like some sick little shit already. Like I don't know how else you would say that.
Uh-huh.
But he ended up committing like little petty crimes and stuff. And
So they say when people like turn into or go into the serial killer mode, ooh, almost spilled my beer. Hold my beer. That they start like killing animals and stuff. I don't remember anything that said that he did something like that. He didn't do animal killings or
no, but he just did weird stuff like what we just talked about. Like he just continued that outside after he had gotten out of the orphanage. But after several years and he became an adult, he started raping young boys, a crime he kept committing even after his mother arranged a marriage with him and this woman. And then in 1898, he was married to a woman 9 years his junior, and they ended up having 6 children named Albert, Anna, Gertrude, Eugene, John, and Henry Fish.
Okay, so before that, though, in 1890, it says Fish, and he arrived in New York City, and he said that he became a male prostitute.
Oh, yes, I did forget about that.
And then began raping young boys, a crime he kept committing after his mother arranged a marriage.
Yeah, so pretty much anything you can think of somebody committing a crime for, like, he's done it. He committed, like, money crimes, and then he actually went to prison for that while he was married.
Do you know how long he was in prison for?
I do not know that. I know it wasn't very long.
Yeah, didn't they say something about him being, like, he wasn't insane, but he had like insane tendencies or something like that?
Yeah, so they actually did like psych evaluations on him, and they said that he was sane, but like what you just said, he just like was a disturbed man or something like that. And I'm like, well, what the fuck is the difference? I mean, if you're disturbed, I would think like there's something mentally wrong with you.
I thought the same thing. I'm like, what's the difference between the two? I don't know. But it says in Sing Sing in 1903, he had sex with men while he was in prison. So he was a male prostitute in Sing Sing.
Yes.
Sing Sing.
But he, I guess, had went from prostituting to like turning his attention to kids. And he was doing it, when I say kids, he was doing it to like little kids. Like he was doing it to mostly like almost toddler age kids, like 6 and under mostly. There were a few older kids that he did that to, but he actually ended up kind of befriending this 17-year-old. And this was pretty bad. He would take him to this house, and he like he had went to this museum like earlier in his life, and he had been fascinated by basically like dissected penises that he had seen in this museum. So when he befriended the 17-year-old kid, he took him to this place where like nobody was around and was like torturing him and stuff, and he ended up cutting half of his penis off.
So Lorraine Bobbitt, he bobbited his house.
He bobbited him.
He
Yeah.
bobbited him. It says that you're right. In 1898, he was a house painter, and he said he continued molesting children, mostly boys under 6 years old. He later recounted an incident in which a male looked over at him to a waxworks museum. That's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Bisexual. Okay. Penises. During a relationship, mentally retarded man, Fish attempted to castrate him after tying him up. The man became frightened and fled. Fish then began intensifying his visits to brothels where he could be whipped and beaten more often. So he wasn't like, he was doing it to the mentally retarded guy, mentally disabled guy. But it's like he was enjoying it being done to him too.
Well, and
sadomasochist.
You know what they actually talk about him being is there's like all these different things that they describe him as. Obviously a sex pervert. He's a cannibalist cannibalist, God. Cannibal. And then something called coprophilia.
Ain't that eating poop?
I didn't know what that was. Urophilia, pedophilia, and masochism. So
Coprophilia. That's a new word for me.
So like they describe him as all these things, and it's like there's all these obviously seem to be medical terms for his psyche, and then they're saying like there's nothing wrong with him. He's just disturbed.
Coprophagia. Practice of eating feces.
That is absolutely disgusting.
So not coprophilia, it's coprophagia.
But
Phagia, whatever.
He ended up killing, I think what he admitted to was like I think 3 kids. And the whole thing was just sick. And like while he was married, and he would actually even get his kids to do his own children to do this to him, he would shove needles into his groin.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
He also had his kids spank him with a paddle that had nails.
Yeah. But
How
he would do it to himself, but then for some reason he would get his kids to do it too.
Because he was
To him.
into kids, and I was just thinking, like, even though he was, the kids were spanking, that had to fuck them up a little bit.
Oh, well, you know it did.
Like, they're thinking my dad wants me to spank him with that paddle with nails on it.
And it's funny that you say that, because what's weird is when you read articles and like watch stuff about him, they always say, well, he never harmed his children. I'm like, that was psychologically like damaging to them, like for real, that he was having them do stuff like that to him. Can you imagine having your father pull down his pants and be like, hey, can you stick needles into my groin? Like, are you for real?
Did he have the kids stick the needles in there, or did he do it himself?
He both. He would do it to himself, and I guess he had been doing that for several years, and then he did have his kids do that.
So when he got fried in the electric chair, they found... we'll talk about that second later. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
But he was just super, super sick, dude. Like, I just don't I think it's so just bizarre. I guess because science and medicine has come so far since then, because this had happened like... this was starting to happen like early 1900s, I guess. But it's just nuts to me that like people were saying that like, oh, he's not psychotic, he's not crazy, he's just disturbed. But then he was doing all this stuff. What is a crazy person doing?
Right? And then it says in January 1917, he left his wife. His wife left him for John Strobe, a handyman who boarded with the Fish family. Following his rejection, Fish began to hear voices. For example, he once wrapped himself in carpet, explaining that he was following the instructions of John the Apostle. So he basically became deranged and thinking he was a holy man or whatever, and that John the Apostle was talking to him.
Yes.
So Fish committed what may have been his first attack on a child named Thomas Bedden in Washington, Delaware, in 1910. Afterwards, he stabbed a mentally retarded boy around 1919 in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. Consistently, many of his intended victims would be either mentally retarded or African American, because he believed these would not be missed, and that stuck out to me. I was
That's so sad.
That's shitty. I'm going to commit crimes to African Americans, and handicapped kids, because the police won't pay as much attention to them if I do that. That's just weird.
Yes, but that's actually a really common thing with serial killers and serial rapists. That Green River killer, that's what he was doing. He was killing prostitutes.
I don't know who the Green River killer is.
He was a serial killer in the Pacific Midwest. But that's what he was doing. He was killing prostitutes, and then most of the time he was dumping their bodies in that river up there.
The Green River?
Sure. But that was his reasoning, is because and it wasn't just his reasoning, but that's what people who study serial killers and like FBI profilers and all of them have figured out, is like that's why they do it, is because they know that there's probably not a good chance that people are going to be looking for them. Because I mean, if they're a prostitute, they're likely living by themselves. They don't have contact with their family. They're probably not married or have a boyfriend or kids. So that's why they do it, because they think that there's no attachment to anybody and they can just get away with it.
Damn. Well, on July 11th, 1924, Fish found an 8-year-old Beatrice Kyle Keel playing alone on her parents' Staten Island farm. He offered her money to come and help. He offered her money to come and help him look for rhubarb in the family field.
It sounds like you're about ready.
Okay.
It sounds like you're about ready to buy candles.
Damn, yeah, okay. I'm starting to feel this a little bit though. Really good.
I told you.
I'm not lying about that.
I know, this is such a good beer, and you know, that's what I really like about high alcohol beers and that's
Get fucked up quick.
well, it's so bad because when we go out and we go to like have dinner or lunch or whatever, even go to a brewery, like that's what I go to first because it's like I just kind of want to have one and like feel it.
I'm kind of the same way. Like just get it done.
Get it over with so I can have one and not be as bloated feeling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. So I should have one beer, get it done. If you want another one, cool. But if not, like, yeah, that bloating thing gets old. But anyway, she was about to leave her from farm. Fish left. turn to. Did I just skip a page? Did I? What is?
I don't know what,
What the
you're looking.
hell?
I don't know what you're looking at.
I don't know either. What just happened here?
I
Let's
don't
go
know.
back. I think I skipped a page. Nope. I'm in the wrong. Okay, here we go. Beatrice killed, playing her parents' dad on a farm. He offered her money to come help look for rhubarb in the neighboring fields. She was not about to leave the. She was not. She was about to leave the farm when her mother chased Fish away. Fish left, but returned later to Kill's barn, where he tried to sleep for the night before being discovered by Hans Kill and told to leave. So he was already stalking this little kid
Yes.
in 1924.
And that kind of happened a lot. Like, he actually had a lot of his victims get away. Like, he either let them go, like that 17-year-old kid that he had cut part of his penis off. He just, like, let him go. Nobody knows what happened to him.
Oh, did he just disappear, but nobody knows what happened?
Yeah, so allegedly he didn't kill
He
him.
ate him.
Allegedly he didn't kill him. He let him go, but nobody ever knows what happened to him.
And you would think at the end he would probably confess to doing that. He confessed to everything else. Kind of. So on May 25th, 1928, Edward Budd put a classified ad in the Sunday edition of the New York World that read, "Young man, 18, wishes position in country. Edward Budd, 406 West 15th Street." That's all it said. "Young man, 18, wishes position in country. Edward Budd, 406 West 15th Street."
So it was an ad. Like,
For a position in country?
like
an
I'm
immigrant?
like like I'm looking for a job.
Oh, okay. All right. On May 28, 1928, Fish, then 58 years old, visited the Budd family in Manhattan, New York City, under the pretense of hiring Edward. He introduced himself as Frank Howard, a farmer from Farmingdale, New York. When he arrived, Fish met Budd's young sister, 10-year-old Grace. They say that when he saw her, all of his attention went to her.
Yeah. He
they're
had changed his mind because he was there to kill Edward.
Yeah. Fish promised to hire Budd and said that he would send for him in a few days. On a second visit, he agreed to hire Budd, then convinced the parent, Delia Flanagan, and Albert Budd, to let Grace accompany him. Bud I don't know what that is. To a birthday party
don't even know what
that
you're
evening at his sister's home. Albert Sr. was a porter for the Equitable Life Assurance Society. Grace had a sister, Beatrice, and two other brothers, Albert Budd II and George Budd. Fish left with Grace that day but never came back.
You know what I think every time I read that or like listen to them tell that story about what happened with her and how he got her away from her family, like that's like if like a house painter came to my parents' house when I was a kid and was like, "Oh, like I have a daughter, can I take her with me?" And then my parents not going. Like, I cannot imagine my parents just letting that happen.
But back then, times were a little bit more innocent. Like,
I mean, they somewhat kind of
I guess
were
they
when I was a
trusted-
kid. No?
That wasn't that long ago. But,
True.
yeah, I guess people were a little bit more trusting back then. Like, you knew your neighbors, you knew everybody.
Well, and what's so sad is it reads that her mom was like real hesitant. And it's like, oh my God, like if you would have just
Sorry.
listened to your gut instinct, like your kid would still be alive. How sad is that?
Yeah, and she originally was trying not to do it, right? And he convinced her.
Yeah.
The police arrested Charles Edward Pope on September 5th, 1930 as a suspect to the kidnapping. He was a 66-year-old apartment house superintendent, and he was accused by his estranged wife. He spent 108 days in jail between his arrest and trial on December 22nd, 1930. 108 days in jail. Mm-hmm. Damn.
I mean, back then, that's a long time. Can you imagine jail back then? It was probably dirty and ugh.
Yeah, 107
Rats.
days of hard time. Hard time.
Yeah.
And then 7 years later, in November 1934, he wrote an anonymous letter sent to the girl's parents in which the police led to Albert Fish, which this whole thing is just...
Oh, it's so sick, dude.
He got off on writing letters to women that put ads in the paper too. Mm-hmm. But he wrote a letter basically to the parents, basically telling them that he ate their daughter.
Yeah.
And how much her ass tasted good in the oven.
And it's like, she was 10 years old. How disgusting is that?
Yeah, the letter said, "Dear Mr. Budd, in 1984, a friend of mine..." The letter quoted here with all the first misspellings and grammatical errors, which already started. That's why I stopped.
I was like, why are you stopping?
Dear Mrs. Budd, in 1894, a friend of mine shipped as a deckhand on the steamer Tacoma, Captain John Davis. They sailed from San Francisco for Hong Kong, China. On arriving there, he and 2 others went ashore and got drunk. When they returned, the boat was gone. At that time, there was famine in China. Meat of any kind was from $1 to $3 per pound. So, is this a letter for real?
Yes.
Oh God.
It is.
This is a long. I'm gonna read the letter anyway.
Okay, I can read it.
I can read it. It's cool. It's cool. So great the suffering among the very poor was all children under 12 were sold for food in order to keep others from starving. I did not know that.
I didn't know that either.
People sold their kids for food.
Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I do believe that. Because in China, they,
Or
I guess they've always been.
well, I mean, yeah, they eat animals that we don't eat.
Well,
over
not
here,
that,
so,
but not that either. But like we watched that movie about the overfishing in the ocean. What was that? Conspiracy.
No, it should have been called Conspiracy. I tell everybody this Conspiracy, but it was called Seaspiracy.
Seaspiracy.
They just missed an opportunity. Okay, I'm on a soapbox.
Even
sorry.
this is today. They just throw them off the boat. Like,
yeah, well, that's true.
So I'm not talking about because they eat animals. I'm saying they just seem to be the nation of like, you can't have more than 2 children, and if you do, we'll come take the third. Like China is still that way.
Has it just always been a communist country? Always?
I'm pretty sure it hasn't always been. I don't know.
But I mean, I'm like you. I can imagine something like that actually happening. I just didn't know that it did.
I didn't either. A boy or girl under 14 was not safe in the street. That's sad. You could go into any shop and ask for a steak, chops, or stew meat. Part of the naked body of a boy or girl would be brought out just for just what you wanted to cut from it.
And just what you wanted cut from it.
Yeah. A boy or girl's behind, which is the sweetest part of the body, and sold as veal cutlet brought to the highest price. John Stade, there's that must be spelling. There's so long he acquired the taste for human flesh. On his return to New York, he stole 2 boys, one 7 and one 11, took them to his home, stripped them naked, tied them in a closet, then burned everything they had on. Several times every day and night, he spanked them, tortured them, to make their meat good and tender. Holy crap. First, he killed the 11-year-old boy because he had the fattest ass, and of course, the most meat on it. Every part of his body was cooked and eaten except the head, bone, and guts. He was roasted in the oven, all of his ass, boiled, broiled, fried, and stewed. The little boy was next, went the same way. At that time, I was living at 409 East 100th Street near the right side. He told me so often good human flesh was made.
He told me so often how good human flesh was. I made up my mind to taste it.
There's no comma at all or anything.
Well, I mean, do you think this guy really cares?
Yeah. So
on Sunday, June the
I'm
3rd,
gonna flip my paper
1928, I called on you at 406 West 15th Street. Brought you pot cheese. What the hell is pot cheese?
and strawberries.
What's pot cheese? Like cream cheese?
Cheese in a pot, Leah.
Okay, so in other words, you don't know what the fuck it is either.
Is it hot in here?
It is really freaking hot, but I think that's because I'm wearing my blanket.
Well, and the blinds are open
my
too.
burrito blanket.
Hey, Amazon's here.
Oh, well, I can't imagine that's probably for you.
I bought back scratchers on Amazon.
Oh my gosh, you know what's so funny? We're gonna get off topic here for a second, but I saw this meme on Facebook yesterday that made me laugh, like actually out loud, because it said when an Amazon driver. Can you imagine what an Amazon driver thinks when they pull up to the same house for like the 20th time in the same
That's
week?
here.
They're probably like, I know it is.
I buy shit all the time.
I
off
almost
Amazon.
sent it to you, but I was just like, oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah, he's about to drop the package. Okay,
Can you please look up what pot cheese is?
Are you really that big? Okay.
Yes, because I've been wanting to know, and I just, you know how I am. I don't do things for myself, so I'm going to have you look it up.
Pot cheese.
Pot cheese and strawberries. Anyway,
Pot cheese.
he said, we had lunch. Grace sat in my lap and kissed me. Why the fuck would she kiss him?
Maybe it was more like a kiss on the cheek
Like
type
a
thing.
grandpa thing.
Pot cheese is very consistency between cottage cheese and farmer's cheese.
Ooh, I love cottage cheese. I don't know what
I found a recipe on how to make it.
I don't know what farmer's cheese is, though. I guess it's just regular
6
cheese.
cups of whole milk, 2 cups of full fat sour cream, and half a teaspoon of salt.
Ooh, that kind of sounds good. Okay, well, anyway. Grace sat in my lap and kissed me. I made up my mind to eat her on the pretense of taking her to a party. You said yes, she could go. I took her to an empty house in Westchester I had already picked out. When we got there, I told her to remain outside. She picked wildflowers. I went upstairs and stripped all my clothes off. I knew if I did not, I would get her blood on my I would get her blood on them. I see what you're saying.
He told her to stay out. See? Yeah.
It is kind of hard to read.
He made her go outside and pick wildflowers while he got naked because he knew if she saw him get naked, she would leave. She would run.
Yes. Well, no. He said if I did not, I would get her blood on them. That's why I took his clothes off because he was
I'm saying he made her stay outside and pick flowers while he got naked.
This whole thing is just so unbelievably sick. When all was ready, I know you really can't drink that like while it's getting hot. You have to drink it while it's really cold. Where the fuck was I? Oh, when all was ready, I went to the window and called her. Then I hid in a closet until she was in the room. When she saw me all naked, she began to cry and she tried to run down the stairs. I grabbed her and she said she would tell her mama. First, I stripped her naked, how she did kick, bite, and scratch. I choked her to death, then cut her in small pieces so I could take my meat to my rooms. My rooms?
I guess he had an oven in his room. And by the way, this is the letter that he wrote.
To my rooms.
My room. He wrote this letter to her parents. They had to read this shit.
To her mom specifically, yeah. I choked her to death. Okay, well, anyway, I took my meat to my rooms, cook and eat it. How sweet and tender her little ass was roasted in the oven. It took me 9 days to eat her entire body. I did not. Oh my God, this is like so disgusting. I did not fuck her though. I could have. I wished. She died a virgin. Mrs. Bed was illiterate and could not read the letter herself, so she had her son read it instead. Fish later admitted to his attorney that he did indeed rape Grace. Fish was a compulsive liar, however, so this may be untrue. He had told the police when asked that it never entered his head to rape the girl. That is like such a hard letter to read.
I mean, why would somebody send that letter to the parents? Just because he was sick and he got off on it.
Yeah.
How sad.
It's extremely sad.
Like the
because
part.
like you, and the whole reason that he decided to turn to kill her instead of her older brother was because he had thought as soon as he saw her, like, I'll just do that because I wasn't sure that I could overpower him anyway because he was 18. You know, and he's a big guy. So it's like, well, am I going to either chance it and have this guy that's bigger than me get away and tell people, or can I just do this to this little girl and get away with it?
So how did they end up catching him?
So
what
I had read is that he had sent this letter and they had traced it back with like the paper that he had used, like the stationery.
Which seems like that would be a very big deal back then, but I guess there wasn't just a lot of stationery to choose from.
Probably not. But it did take a little while for them to catch him, but they eventually found him and arrested him. But he never, the ones he admitted to were obviously Grace Budd, Bill Gaffney, and then there was a little girl named Frances X. McDonald. She was 8 years old. Bill Gaffney was 8, and Grace was 10. Those are the only ones that he admitted to killing. But then, like you said, he had quoted, like, I've had a child in every state. So they didn't know if that meant, like, I had done something to a kid in every state or I killed a kid in every state. They never understood what that meant. But anyway, he was tried and sentenced, and he ended up at Sing Sing prison in New York.
Sing Sing.
And he was executed by electrocution on January 16th, 1936.
So before he was electrocuted, he told the guard that he was sticking needles in his groin. The guard was like, "This guy's crazy." Like,
I never read that part.
Yeah, and then they also said that before he was electrocuted, he was getting off on the fact sexually, thinking that he was going to get a lot of pleasure out of the pain. So he was looking forward to the execution. When he was executed, they said that he jolted back twice because the pins in his groin did something that messed up
internally.
the circuitry, and it did something, and he basically it fucked him up pretty bad. And he basically fell back twice, and then he slumped over and it killed him. But all the pins in his groin. Something happened.
His groin.
Groin.
Whatever the fuck
Growing. Growing. How do you say it?
Groin.
Growing? Growing? Growing?
Growing? You do
Growing.
not say that.
No, I don't. Growing. How do I say that? Growing? Growing? I don't know.
It's groin.
Doesn't matter. The point is. The point is. Shit. Okay, well, you got like 2 more pages of stuff here. What's this post-capture discoveries? Billy Gaffney. That's the kid you're talking about.
Yes. But really the whole thing that he is famous for is the Grace Budd case because he wrote that letter. That's really the only reason that he's like as well known as he is. Because he did that. I don't think there's a lot of people out there that like would directly write letters to the parents telling them what they did to their kid. And it wasn't just that he wrote the letter saying that. It was that he had some story to preface it, to almost explain to them why he did it. Like why he ate her. Oh, my friend ate kids and he liked it, so that's why I'm eating her.
So regarding,
like, what the fuck?
Like this guy's a mess. So regarding Billy Gaffney, he basically said he stripped him naked and tied his hands and feet, gagged him with a piece of dirty rag that he picked out of the dump.
Ugh.
Then he burned his clothes, threw his shoes in the dump. Then I walked back and took the trolley to 59th Street at 2 a.m. and walked from there home. Next day, about 2 p.m., I took tools, a good heavy cat o' nine tails, homemade, short handle, cut one of the belts in half, slit the 6 halves of strips about 8 inches long. I whipped his bare behind until the blood ran from his legs, cut off his ears, nose, slit his mouth from ear to ear, gouged out his eyes, and then he died. He did all that shit while the kid was alive.
Sounds very Green Inferno.
Stuck the knife in his belly and held my mouth to his body and drank his blood. Picked up 4 old potato sacks and gathered a pile of stones, then cut them up. I had a grip with me. I don't know what that is. A grip. Put his nose, ears, and a few slices of his belly in the grip. Then I cut him through the middle of his body, just below the belly button. Then through his legs, about 2 inches below his behind. I put this grip with a lot of paper. I put this in my grip with a lot of paper. Cut off his head, feet, arms, hands, and the legs below the knees. Then I put in sacks weighed with stones, tied the ends, and threw them into the pool of slimy water you would see along the side of the road going to North Beach. Like,
I had not heard of him until
what did it make you think of this?
A few weeks ago.
Because the last podcast, you were just like, I know what we're doing next. We're doing whatever this guy's name is.
Yeah.
Fish.
So I really didn't know that extensively about him. I knew that he was a child serial killer, but I wanted to do it because we hadn't really looked at a child serial killer before. And I mean, there's really not like a whole lot of those out there. I mean, there probably are. They're just unknown. But I thought it was interesting, and then I really started to dig into it, and I was like, oh my God, like he's probably the sickest person I have ever read about, ever.
This is pretty bad. It really is pretty bad. Let's see.
It's like, I just can't imagine doing that to anybody, let alone a kid. I mean...
It says on his execution date, Fisher arrived in March of 1935. He was executed January 16th, 1936 in the electric chair at Sing Sing. He entered the chamber at 11:06 p.m. and was pronounced dead 3 minutes later. He was buried in the Sing Sing prison cemetery. He was recorded to have said that electrocution would be the supreme thrill of my life. Just before the switch was flipped, he stated, "I don't even know why I'm here." Legend has it that his execution took longer due to the numerous needles inserted in his privates, which disrupted the flow of electricity.
Have you seen the X-ray?
Yeah, I saw that. It's weird.
like so many.
And he was basically telling the guard that he had it. And the guard like, yeah, whatever. And yeah. So.
Well, I mean, at that point, what are you going to do about it? Are they going to surgically remove him? Probably not.
So it makes you wonder if he was doing all that stuff to make the execution last a little bit longer. I'm not sure if he even knew that it was going to do that.
Well, no, he had been doing that since he was a kid.
Sticking needles in your groin.
Yeah, he had been doing that since he was much younger, before he had killed anybody. He's just so...
He's so what?
This case almost leaves you speechless, because can't imagine.
It's not very often that Lee is speechless, by the way.
No, shut the fuck up.
Hey. You're not that way.
But I mean, really though, there's not really words to describe how terrible that is. That whole entire thing.
Yeah, the whole thing's pretty sick and extremely interesting because of how the trial went, how they said he wasn't insane. I think maybe they just didn't make him insane because they could kill him.
Well,
Otherwise,
true.
maybe that's
I
what
didn't
it
think
was.
about that. But
And-
he's definitely somebody that I fully believe deserved the death penalty.
I do, and I wish it would have been something more painful and longer. After
More painful than the electric chair. I
And-
think that's probably
and
pretty
longer.
bad.
Something that wouldn't be so quick. 3 minutes is pretty quick. I mean,
You saying that though, I mean, he liked pain, so whatever you did to him, he was going to enjoy it, it sounds like.
yeah, and I just wish it would have been something more prolonged for all the shit that he
More
did.
graphic.
Yeah, I guess maybe I don't know, being hung behind dragged behind a horse to death. I don't know, something painful.
He is the reason to me that the death penalty is a thing. Because people like that, I mean, if they even had a chance of getting out of prison, they would do it again in a heartbeat as soon as they got out.
And you know he would have too.
Oh, yeah. You know he would have. And what's so crazy about him is, like, a lot of those kids, I think, probably weren't very scared of him at first because he looked like a freaking grandpa. Like, he didn't look like anybody that would have done something like that.
At first he was really clean cut looking, just an older guy.
Yeah, but he became known as the Gray Man because he had gray hair, a big gray mustache, and they said that he actually, everything about him just looked gray, even his skin. It was just very, very sick, a very sad case. If you haven't heard about him, I definitely encourage you to read about it. It's an interesting case despite being so disgusting, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, that was the case of Albert Fish paired with Peticolas Sit Down or I'll Sit You Down Imperial IPA.
Yeah, so please like and subscribe, follow our Instagram, Booze and Bloodshed, and let us know what you think about tonight's episode, and feel free to send us suggestions for future episodes. Keep an eye out for the next show topics for discussion on our Instagram, and make sure, what's the email address?
boozeandbloodshed@gmail.com.
Yep, Instagram,
At Booze and Bloodshed, as well on Facebook.
and is there one more, right? It's just the two? Okay.
Yeah, we don't have Twitter or anything. Honestly, I don't even know how to work Twitter, so.
You're so old.
I am so old.
Okay, we appreciate you guys joining us. Tune in for next time, and we'll see you later.
Peace.
It's a